Hey there, Ramblers. Before we get started with today's episode, we need to give you a little heads up so the interview you're about to hear doesn't throw you for a loop. We recorded today's episode several weeks ago when the name of the band in question was Atomic Junction. In fact, we even posed the question to Aaron Perlut, its founder and primary songwriter, lead singer, and guitarist, does the name Atomic Junction hinder the band's progress? You'll hear the question and answer during the interview. You'll also hear us refer to the band with that name throughout. We did not edit or recut the episode after Perlut announced the band's name has now changed. They now go by Atomic Junction. Perlut even told me the decision was finalized after fielding that very question from us here on Roots Music Rambler. Now, certainly, we weren't the only ones curious about the band's name, which to some serves as a double entendre for something rather obscene. But maybe it was our direct ask that convinced the band maybe Atomic Junction would serve them better. So the show notes, links, and the like will say Atomic Junction. But what you're about to hear was recorded before the name change when the band was Atomic Junction. Hopefully that won't be too confusing. And now, welcome to Roots Music Rambler. Whether you're picking and grinning or just grinning, grab a drink, pull up a seat. It's time for Roots Music Rambler. Turn it up. So, first of all, thank you for hosting Karen and I, or Karen and me, I suppose is the right way to say that. This past weekend in Chicago, we came up and had our Tyler Childers experience, Fitzgerald's experience as well, and we had a blast. So thanks to you and Tom and Nani and everybody else for having us up in the Chicagos.
Thank you for the tickets to the show. And yeah, it was a good time. It was a really good time.
We did have a good time. So I'll start out by saying to the audience out there, the Tyler Childers S.G. Goodman show was amazing for a bazillion reasons. We love S.G. Goodman here on the show. We talk about her a lot. It's the third time I've seen her. She was fantastic. And seeing her in a big venue with a big audience was really cool because I've only seen her in smaller, sort of places. I mean, at Waterfront Wednesday was pretty good. There's usually, anywhere between probably 7,000 and 12,000 people that show up for that. So that's a pretty good, it's an outdoor thing down on the river. But to see her in the United Center with, 20,000 people or whatever, how many were there, was really, really cool. And then I will tell you this, my expectations of the Tyler Childers show were absolutely met. I knew it would be amazing. I knew he would sound fantastic. I knew his band is one of the best congregations of great musicians out there, and the food stamps are just tight. They're just really good. Mm-hmm. But then I wasn't quite expecting the multimedia presentation kind of behind him, and that took it up a couple of notches for me and kind of blew it out of the water. And I was just like, I was stunned the whole night, and really, really impressed with what Tyler and his team have done. It was an experience for sure.
Totally. I agree. And this was your first time seeing Tyler,
mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
Okay. I mean, I'm not trying to gatekeep or anything, but that was my fifth time seeing Tyler. And it was so unlike every other show of his that I've been to. And when we were walking out of United Center, I think I even said to you and Karen that the first time I saw Tyler Childers, it was 2018. We were at Shuba's, another iconic Chicago music venue. And I don't even know what the capacity of Shuba's is. It's in the hundreds, right? Like It's not a very big place. And Tyler was a completely different person. Like, I'm sure he was all sorts of fucked up. The man did not blink his eyes one time. All he did was stare like at some point in the back of the room, and he just played. Mm-hmm. And it was awesome. I mean, I was all sorts of fucked up too, but it was so good and just so cool. And that was my first time seeing him. And then I saw him a few more times in bigger venues than Shuba's, but nowhere near the size of United Center.
Right.
So I even, we talked about it. I was a little unsure about how this was going to go being in the United Center, because it's a giant stadium. The Chicago Bulls and Chicago Blackhawks play there, mm-hmm. But I was not offended or annoyed in any way, shape, or form. The crowd was a little weird, Not quite what I was expecting. All ages,
Uh-huh.
It just was that aspect for me was a little different. It took a minute for me to kind of wrap my mind around it. But that whole backdrop thing, the multimedia,
Mm-hmm.
Stuff in the background. It was neat. It was neat to watch. And I am just Tyler is a completely different person these days. It was like a rock concert and then like half comedy show.
Yeah.
He was the on stage banter was enjoyable. And I'm just happy to see that he's healthy and in a good place. And you could tell he's loving what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And Craig and his hair are fantastic.
Yes, absolutely. And Craig had on chaps, personalized chaps, the bass player. For those of you who don't know the band all that well, Craig is the bass player, and he's a white guy with a huge fro, essentially, and looks like he should be playing in like Wild Cherry or Casey and the Sunshine Band. But yeah, he had on custom chaps. They had his name on the bottom of it. It was absolutely hysterical. And then a couple members of the band had Chicago Bulls jerseys on. And then when Tyler went off stage, or the band went off stage at one point, and Tyler introduced them, and they played the old iconic intro music from the Chicago Bulls days when Michael Jordan played. And Tyler introduced all of the band members that way, which was a cute little addition and hat tip to the venue they were in. Here's what concerns me about the show. And by the way, I'll echo the sentiment. Tyler is a different person now on stage because he's sober, and he's living his best life, and he's done great, and proud of him for doing that. And I'm glad that he's different than he once was with the no blinking and not really talking to people, because he's obviously very engaging and very entertaining.
Yes.
Here's what concerns me about this show.
Okay.
I'm worried that Tyler Childers fans are now going to expect something better the next tour. And I don't know how he can top this.
That's fair.
I mean, it was that good. I walked out of there thinking, I don't know that I'm ever going to see a Tyler Childers show that will match that. It can't get any better. Now, the challenge for him and his crew is make it better. And if they do, holy crap. But
yeah.
I mean, what I saw there was entertainer of the year material. Like, you cannot be in the music business and be a voter for an award like that with CMA or whomever and walk away and not think, holy crap, that was an experience.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely fantastic. And I'm concerned that the next tour isn't going to be as good. Now, it could be okay. They could strip it down and make it a lot different, but I don't know. That was my only concern coming out of there, was how is he going to top this? Because it's that good. And if you have an opportunity to go see the Mule Pull Tour with Tyler Childers before this year's out or whenever the tour's over, please go do it, because it is an experience that you will remember forever. It's fantastic. He's fantastic. The band's fantastic. And I've actually already, this is kind of happenstance, when I came home from the show, I was actually looking for Joy Olatakun. I've seen her once in Indianapolis, and I really want to see her again, and I'd like to see her in a more intimate setting. And she's still playing smaller clubs because she hasn't, completely blown up mainstream yet. So I went to her website and I was looking at her tour dates. And August 23rd, she's opening for Tyler.
Oh, shit.
And she's not only opening for Tyler, she's opening for Tyler at the Gorge, which is an iconic outdoor concert venue in Washington State. And so I have officially crossed the line into fucking insane, because I immediately bought tickets, booked an airline, booked a hotel, booked a rental car. And on August 23rd, I'm seeing my two favorite artists, Tyler Childers and Joy Olatakun, together at the Gorge.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Shit.
I've lost my mind and probably my credit, but whatever.
Oh, wow. Okay. Good for you. I would love to see a show at the Gorge one day, and to see Tyler there. That would be outstanding. But oh my goodness, how fun.
Yeah. And I will document that on our social channels as best I can, or I'll document them on mine, and Frank will make sure they get on the Roots Music Rambler social channels, as she often does. But yeah, that's going to be one of those trips. And no, I'm just going by myself. It's in the middle of the school year, so Karen can't get away from mom duties. And, I have the flexibility with my day job that I can kind of travel and still work. So I'm going by myself, and it's just going to be. I'm going to fly into Spokane. I've never been to Spokane,
I love Spokane.
and so I'm going to fly in and just enjoy the weekend. It's a Friday night show, and so I'm going to make a weekend out of it, and I'll document it and share it with everybody here. And I cannot wait. If you don't know what we're talking about when we say the Gorge, go Google it. The Gorge Music Venue, Washington State. It's like Red Rocks in Colorado. It's so iconic and beautiful because of the natural setting it's in that it's just breathtaking.
I
There's
was
actually a
going to say the same
documentary
thing.
about it on one of the channels too, so it's good.
Yeah, I was going to compare it to Red Rocks.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't been there either, but Spokane is such a great town. I love it there. So we'll talk off camera later, and I'll give you some pointers.
Sounds good. Welcome to Roots Music Rambler. She's Frank.
He's Falls.
And we're rambling on through the stories behind the music we love. Today on the show, we are talking to Aaron Perlut. He is the lead singer and songwriter behind the band Atomic Junk Shot. Yes, you heard the name right, Atomic Junk Shot. Now, as one might expect, their music is a little off-center. There's a good amount of humor and sarcasm built into some of the songs, but their new album, Peacedale, is actually a pretty strong compilation of good Midwestern-based Americana and country songs. Aaron and the group are from the St. Louis area, so it's that sort of alt-country cradle, and you can hear some of those influences in their music. But we're going to have a really good conversation with Aaron about that because I know he's not from St. Louis. He's lived around a bunch of different places. So getting into the roots of his influences and why he's doing this with this band and the songs that he writes and whatnot is going to be a pretty interesting conversation.
Well, and I'm expecting it to be even more interesting because there's a little more to the story, right? Like you and Aaron go way back.
Yeah. So Aaron and I have been friends for probably 15 or maybe 20 years now. It's been a while. And we actually once worked together. So his day job, like my day job, is in the marketing, PR, social media world. And I actually hired his company to be a PR firm for a company that I was working for once upon a time. And then when I left that company, I was offered a position at his company. So I actually worked for Aaron and his two business partners at a PR firm there in St. Louis. And so we've worked together. We've, created some, interesting, fun ad campaigns and things like that for clients before together. We've traveled a lot together. So I know Aaron pretty well. We've kind of lost day-to-day conversation since I moved on from that position. So I talk to him every now and then, but haven't caught up with him in a while. And I'll be honest with you, it's going to be a fascinating conversation for me because I didn't even know until maybe a year and a half ago that he even played guitar, much less wrote songs. So, and one of the things I want to ask him is, he's probably, I don't think he's older than me. He's probably a little younger than me, but he's in his probably late 40s, early 50s. And so he's getting started with the band pretty late in life. I think that's a fascinating angle and questions I want to ask him about because he's recently or is soon to be an empty nester, which might be one cause for it. But I also know that he's recently gotten sober. So, a la Tyler Childers, we've got somebody else who's entered a different phase of their life and is creating something cool. So it's going to be really interesting. I know him probably too well. So I'm probably going to let Francesca ask most of the questions, but I'm going to interject some things and I probably have a little bit more context to it than other people do, but it's going to be fun.
All right. I'm looking forward to that. And also on the show, we'll do our normal Pickin the Grinnin segment, share our picks for whose music is making us grin. They might be new artists, might be old, but they sure will be good. And before we kick it all off,
well, we've got some big news because we're recording this particular episode the Monday after Father's Day. And on Father's Day, Shooter Jennings posted something on Instagram that I think everyone, if you haven't heard it already, which by the time this thing comes out, everybody probably will have heard it. But we have to talk about this because the day before Father's Day was Waylon Jennings' birthday. And so Shooter posted on Father's Day. It's a long post, but to kind of sum it up, essentially for years, Shooter Jennings has had the Waylon Jennings archives, these old, recordings and tapes from studios that he and his band recorded over the years. A lot of stuff that has never been heard, a lot of stuff that's never been released or published. And so and Shooter's had this stuff for years, as obviously as Waylon's son, but has never really gotten around to really digging into it and listening to it. So he and another producer went through the catalog of all of Waylon Jennings' albums and recordings. And what Shooter reported that he found was a massive historical documentation of a band with an incredible friendship, work ethic, and deep passion for playing and recording music. And so what he announced kind of on Instagram on Father's Day, that he is in possession of a treasure trove of previously unheard full band Waylon Jennings multi-track recordings from the 70s and early 80s. And he's begun preparing the material to be mixed and published. They are not demos. They are not unfinished, but they will take some time to explore, prepare, and mix. But we have something to look forward to. There will be new classic Waylon Jennings music in 2025. Wow.
Yeah. I saw that yesterday too. And I was like, oh, damn, this is huge.
Yeah. I mean, this is like, I know that there have been some instances over the years where something's been drug out of the archives for one artist or another. I know a lot of the Hank Williams Sr. recordings were dusted off and republished in the 80s. And then, of course, there was the, kind of fancy combination duo with he and Hank Williams Jr. There's a Tear in My Beer, which was actually a really good hit song for the two of them, which was kind of cool to see, Hank Jr. Singing with his dad, even if it was just for a gimmicky music video and song. But to have someone who is a producer like Shooter Jennings is, get a hold of a treasure trove of unheard, unearthed music from a legend like Waylon Jennings, I can't wait. Like it's what, he can put any price tag on that. And I think most people will pay it because it's going to be great, I'm sure.
Agreed.
So good stuff to look forward to. I'm super excited. Well, we're sipping on a bourbon and I'm out. So we're going to take a quick break for a refill. Take a moment, if you will, and listen to more about the awesome sponsors that help make this show happen, including Musk Ox Flannels. They are the most buttery, soft, built like tank flannels on the whole entire planet. They're incredibly soft. They have incredible sizes and colors. And I love the fact that they have the seasonal flannels, so you can get the thin ones that are not as hot for the summertime and still have the flannel look and all that good stuff. And every $10 of every $100 purchased goes to wildlife conservation efforts to actually conserve and protect the actual muskox up in Alaska. So the place that you go to get these is gomuskox.com/Rambler, and then use the code Rambler and you get a discount. These are buttery soft, built like a tank, just like me. Get you some muskox flannels. gomuskox.com/Rambler. Use the code Rambler. Get a discount. When we come back, we're going to explore the demented mind of one Mr. Aaron Perlut, leader of the band Atomic Junk Shot. Prepare yourself for as odd a guest as we can probably muster. Don't go away. This is Roots Music Rambler. Hey, gang, I was not a flannel guy until I found Muskox flannels. Now, I don't want to wear anything else. Well, I mean, pants, but you know what I mean. Anyway, so Muskox is a premium flannel shirt that comes in various colors and styles, but also all season or heavy. So they have different weights and thicknesses. They even have sizes that fit big boys like me. Now, Frank, I hear the ladies like the flannel look. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Yeah, there we go. Nice. So one Muskox flannels customer actually said they are buttery soft, but built like a tank. I resemble that remark, especially when I'm wearing my Muskox flannels. They also, by the way, give $10 of every $100 order to support wildlife conservation. So you're doing some good for the earth and the animals on it with every purchase. Visit gomuskox.com/Rambler, browse the collection and get you some buttery soft, built like a tank premium flannels. Make sure you use the code Rambler, all caps, and get the discount on your order. That's gomuskox.com/Rambler. Use the code Rambler, buttery soft, yo. That might be my new hashtag.
tight, yes, could be. Close buds, just you and me. Then one night, at the bar, drinking Jack. Saw you kissing on my wife in the back. She and I said I do. In New Orleans back in '92. Now you're leaving with her on your arm. Gonna knock the boots in your broken ass car. My life's a
That's My Life's a Bitch from the new album Peacedale from Atomic Junk Shot, a relatively new band on the Americana scene. Its fearless leader, who strikes fear in most, including me, is our guest today. Aaron Perlut joins us. Aaron, what's up, my friend?
Hey guys, how are you? Thank you so much for having me on.
Well, we're glad to have you. So let's start with the new album. You guys just released it a little bit ago, but you released it not long after going into the studio. What's it like to record your first record? Any surprises in the process?
Yeah, this was actually this was our first full-length studio album. It was a very, very different process than we had ever been through before. We did an EP a couple years ago, and that was done in St. Louis. Then we did a live album, but this one was so different in that we got approached by a producer from New York who has a very specific process the way he produces and records bands. And so he's got this pretty beautiful 20-acre spread in near Bristol, Connecticut, right near ESPN. And when he records you, you go stay in the house on the property, and then he's got a recording studio on the property. And so every morning, you kind of roll on down there, you caffeinate and roll on down there, and then we would spend 10 hours in the studio with him for about 5 straight days and knocked out 10 songs. So it was a pretty intensive process, but it was also compacted. So it wasn't like we were at it for months and months and months. So we went in there, we had been playing these songs for a while, probably a year or two, and a bunch of them are actually on our live record, but they sound pretty different. And I think what changed was, I had sent him all 10 songs beforehand and wanting to make sure that he was down with those songs and how we played them. But he also had his own visualization for what these songs could ultimately be under his tutelage, for lack of a better term. And so there were certain things we were altering, whether it was a guitar riff here and there, or whether it was a vocal melody, or even adding in small little things like tambourine or what have you after the fact. And so they took a different shape. And then lastly, all 4 of us in the band were there. We did record 2 things after the fact. Jimmy Wallace, he's a Grammy nominated piano player in Nashville. He overdubbed keys on there and did such an amazing job, kind of giving it somewhere between honky tonk and this Bob Seger feel. And it's honestly some of my favorite parts of the record. Ironically, the one part we didn't play. And then we did do backing vocals in St. Louis. I sat with a woman named Spencer Harris who did the backing vocals, and she was really terrific. But so they were kind of the same songs, but Greg definitely had his vision for how he wanted them to be recorded at the end.
Yeah. It sounds like when you were talking about the spread and you go and kind of stay on the property, it reminded me of a lot of the the Led Zeppelin stuff when they'd go out to Wales and stay in the cabins and stuff like that. What did you learn from working with a producer like that maybe you've picked up that you've put in the back of your mind to say, the next time we go in the studio, I'm going to do this way, or what'd you pick up?
That's interesting in that I think it's really, more than anything, it's really important to have someone who is much, much smarter than you at the helm. And we've got myself not included, we have 3, I think, pretty talented musicians in the band. And but having Greg there, who is a terrific musician, and he's worked with some pretty impressive people, like touring with Alanis Morissette and the Allman Brothers, and producing Amy Ray from from the Indigo Girls, having someone like him who's kind of just looking over our shoulder and has this kind of parallel vision with us. And he also really, really understood us. I think that was probably the most important thing, is that he knew what we were before we went in there with him. And so I think that having someone who really got what we were trying to achieve and had a good positive impression of us going in, I thought was a really great aspect of it.
That's weird, because I've known you for 20 years and I don't understand you at all.
Yeah, no, he didn't understand me. The band as a unit, not me.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah,
That
I
makes sense.
irritated the fuck out of him. So
Okay, so tell us about the sound. How would you describe Atomic Junk Shot and this album to someone who wanted to know what to expect musically?
yeah, that's a really good question, because everybody you talk to has kind of a different take on us. I will say this: the band we get compared to most, this is not me, but the band that people randomly compare us most to is Drive-By Truckers. And which is pretty, like, so when I hear that, I'm like, okay, doing all right.
That's quite a comparison.
Yeah, I mean, and so I would not say that. The people I strive to be like are, my heroes are people like Steve Earle is kind of like my North Star. Lyrically, probably, I think Ray Wiley Hubbard is probably the greatest living songwriter there is. And, I try to embody the sarcasm. His sarcasm is so much smarter than mine. Mine is kind of right on the nose, but his is just brilliant and subtle. And yeah, and then I think, Greg Griffith, our producer, feels that we have. He gave me this great quote. He said, you guys are somewhere between like the early Replacements, like from the 80s, and Reba McEntire. So he said, like, you've got this kind of like post-punk. It's like, that cowpunk thing. Like, you have this post-punk feel and a little honky-tonk in you. So it's somewhere between punk and honky-tonk. And I thought that kind of nicely framed where we are, because we do have, like, if you've listened to the album, there's some bangers that are kind of have a punk attitude and feel, and then there are some very honky tonk songs, like Honky Tonk Drinking Song or Now She Is My Ex, and everything in between. And it's a really strange dichotomy.
So I know it's unfair to compare a band or artist to others, but certainly you'll take the Drive-By Truckers comparison. The band that keeps coming to mind to me when I listen to your songs, and this is probably tainted by the fact that I know you and I know your sense of humor, but the band, and this is actually kind of coincidentally also a St. Louis-based band, is the Bottle Rockets. I think you guys sound lyrically, maybe not so much musically, but lyrically, and there's some similarities on the music side as well, but your sense of humor and the sarcasm that you throw in there reminds me of a Bottle Rocket song.
Yeah, and that's high praise, actually. And they are, they're a terrific band. And I think actually, Jason, that's a good comparative, because they do have a little bit of punk and a little bit of honky tonk in them.
Yep.
And their lead singer Brian actually is still kind of active in music circles here. He plays in a band called great band called Diesel Island that plays these country standards. And so I go see them every once in a while. And
with John Horton.
Yeah, they're pretty terrific.
Right. Yeah, John Horton, the guitarist there, was on our show not long ago, and I was very disappointed and heartbroken when the Bottle Rockets sort of announced that Brian wasn't going to be doing the full-time thing anymore, and they just kind of broke up, which sucked. But I'm glad to know that he's still out there playing a little bit, so maybe we can go see him at some point. So I want to let people listen to some of the byproduct of all these confluences and inspirations. We're going to go to break with Dirt Roads, the first track on Peacedale. It's the new album from Atomic Junk Shot. Don't go away. This is Roots Music Ramble.
days.
Hey, Ramblers, I have experienced a revolution in sound in my house, and you can too. The revolution is driven by Sonos. The Sonos wireless music system lets you play any song in any room, control it all with the Sonos app on your phone or tablet. Sonos has all the connections to give you millions of songs and stations, including connecting to your iTunes, your Spotify, Pandora, and more. Get a wireless Sonos player and hear the sound quality difference. Then get one for all the rooms in your house where you listen, but might be out of reach of the stereo or Bluetooth speaker you normally use. So I've got one in my bedroom and bathroom for when I get ready in the morning. I've got one in the kitchen and living room for when I'm hanging out with friends. And then down here in the office den for when I'm working or setting up for another episode of the show. I happen to like the Sonos Move, which is one of the speaker models. I can put it out on my patio for cookouts. It's a weather-resistant design, has an 11-hour battery life, so I don't need to plug it in out there when I have people over for cookouts or tailgates or whatever. And I can play music on all or just a few of the speakers, so I never lose my jams going from room to room. Try the Move and hear the difference, then hook up all the rooms in your house for an excellent listening experience while you move around cleaning or dancing or whatever you do in the privacy of your own home. Listen to Roots Music Rambler on it, for God's sakes. It makes me sound even more handsome. Go to rootsmusic.link/Sonos, S-O-N-O-S, rootsmusic.link/Sonos. That'll take you right to the Sonos Move speaker page to purchase. I highly recommend it, and you'll love how much better your music and podcasts sound. Go to rootsmusic.link/Sonos. That's rootsmusic.link/Sonos.
56 Chicago in the summertime. No wind blowing, pavement hot, damn near frying. Cubs at 8th, Wrigley just ain't no fun. Kinda restless, feeling like half past done. Hop in my old black Mercury, down 50 cause there ain't no interstate. Searching for our first time, think we might just test our fate. Word is that there's quite a few, might be 18.
Welcome back to Roots Music Rambler. That song is Kankakee from Atomic Junk Shot off its new album, Peacedale. Links are in the show notes. We're talking to Aaron Perlut today. All right, Aaron, go ahead. Tell us about Kankakee. What's that song about?
So several years ago, my father made the mistake of telling me a story from his youth when he was in his late teens. If you remember the movie, what was that movie? Porky's, where the kids from college go off to the rural bordello. And so that is a story about the first time my daddy made sweet love in a whorehouse in Kankakee, Illinois. And it was funny because, he told me. And so then I went and I actually, like, every song I write, if it's about a person or a place, and most of them are, I do a lot of research about them. And so I went and dug into the history of Kankakee. And in the 40s and 50s, Kankakee, which is a real small town between St. Louis and Chicago, it had like 18 whorehouses. And that had been, some of them were run by the Chicago mob, and they had been built to service the railroad industry was booming there.
Wow.
And so my dad, was a typical horny teenager. And but my favorite part of that story is that recently we were on TV before our album dropped and played that song. And I just said, hey, there's a story about the lurid history of Kankakee and its bordellos. My father saw that and he emailed me. He said, I would appreciate if you would tell the actual origin story of that song.
My God.
I was like, I thought, it'd be irritating. He was like, no. And so, he and my mom came, and I had told the story before when they'd come to see us live, but they came to see our record release show, and I told the story in full, and I was just looking over him side stage, and he's laughing, and my mom actually had a big smile on her face. It's pretty funny.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic. So, a somewhat related story, not exactly, but the first comedy show I took my son Grant to, who Aaron knows Grant and has known Grant for a long time, was Tom Segura. And it was on the Sledgehammer tour. And if you've ever seen that special on Netflix, you know that he kind of starts off the show by basically saying to the audience, I would like for you to take a moment to imagine your mom and your dad having sex. And that was one of the first jokes that Grant ever heard from a comedian live with me sitting right next to him. And I almost pissed myself laughing. It was so good. So it was good stuff. All right. So, Aaron, you and I are roughly the same age. I think you're a little younger than me. I think I said this in the intro of the show, and I've got a couple of other sort of questions to ask about this, but until a couple of years ago, I didn't know you even played guitar, much less wrote music. And you're coming to this, band thing, trying to, be an artist and make music and whatnot, pretty late in life. Why the switch to this at this point?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So when I was I think 46, it was exactly 7 years ago. I got tired of watching my kids take piano lessons for 10 years before that. And I had had this guitar in my basement that I had never touched, learned how to play. And since I was a teenager, I had always wanted to play rock and roll music and be in a band. So I asked their piano teacher after a lesson one Sunday morning, I said, hey, do you do guitar lessons? He's like, I just hired some guy. And so this guy named Adam Hoskins, who'd been one of the founders of Pokey Lafarge's band, started teaching me lessons. And within a year, I started composing music. And Life's a Bitch is actually one of the first 3 songs I ever wrote, and explains why it's so terrible on the new record. I started composing, and then I started trying to dig in, and I got obsessed with it and put the band together within a few months after that. So I had been maybe playing for a year and a half, and I'm trying to play now in the confines of a 3-person band, and terribly doing that, but I just kind of kept working at it and building these songs. And I thought that the most important thing, and I've done this all my life, is it's not hard for me to do, but you try to surround yourself with people who are better than you at what you're doing, which is super easy for me because everyone's better than me at anything I try to do. And which is, Jason, why you and I used to work together. And so, I think, I think the big aha moment for me though was, I was so bad at first. And at the time, I hadn't addressed some mental health issues with anxiety that I have, and I at that point, and I felt like that I could distract people from my lack of musicality by writing joke songs a la Tenacious D and Wheeler Walker Jr.
Yeah,
and then there reached a point where the Me Too movement fundamentally changed comedy, and 2, I started to get comfortable, and I think that was really the big factor. So I started to write songs that had greater meaning, and a bunch of them are actually on this record. And then I started to finally get comfortable with my musicality. Because I had also, at the same time where I'd never played guitar, I had also never sung outside of a shower. And
thank God.
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, you and I were at a karaoke event once, and I remember you sent me a picture of you making a questionable look on your face like this when I was trying to do karaoke. And that was before any of this, well before any of this. So yeah, you're right, Jason. I had no background in this whatsoever, and I still don't love the sound of my own voice, but I feel like I feel comfortable. Like I don't mind playing in front of pretty much anyone now.
Wow. All right. So then before you started writing and playing guitar, take us back to that time. As a fan, when and where did music come into play for you?
So I have been invested in music since a teen. I was obsessed, but I didn't grow up in a very musical household at all. And I think it was in junior high, I started getting obsessed with classic rock records. And so I was, joining every Columbia club, or Columbia House and BMG club I could. and ordering albums and then CDs and what have you. And I have a huge collection of albums and CDs, at least the ones that my wife doesn't know about. and I was an early box set purchaser. So the Clapton box set, which I think was the very first one, the Allman Brothers box set, the Stones box set, all of that stuff. And then also when I was a teenager, I had this piece of shit Oldsmobile station wagon that only had an AM radio, and the only channel I could get was WMZQ, a country radio station coming out of Washington, D.C. And so I listened to a lot of classic 70s and early 80s country music growing up. So Willie and Waylon and George Strait and George Jones and Randy Travis. And so the confluence of my obsession with buying classic rock records and then listening to tons of old country music growing up really kind of shaped, I guess, my tastes today.
Yeah. It's kind of funny how you kind of actually led right into the question that I wanted to ask you, because we mentioned the Bottle Rockets, and obviously St. Louis, we've talked on this show before that St. Louis has this sort of, it's kind of the cradle of alt country, right? You had the Uncle Tupelo guys are from that area, which spun off Sunvolt and Wilco. And then of course, Bottle Rockets are there as well. And while I was thinking about, okay, well, the Atomic Junk Shot is much in that style. They're from St. Louis. Maybe there is, some influence there. But I also, as you alluded, I know you're not from St. Louis. I know you've lived around the country, a lot of different places. So does the St. Louis sound have an impact on you, or is this just kind of this coincidence of influences that, and you happen to live in St. Louis?
I think it's probably more of a coincidence than anything else. I think probably, I mentioned some of the artists that have kind of shaped my worldview, along with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers and Springsteen, but I do love a lot of bands in kind of the alt country space. Uncle Tupelo is probably one of the more underappreciated bands of the last 30 years. And while I'm not I was a big fan of the early Wilco stuff, but Sunvolt's material has always really spoken to me. And Jay Farrar is pretty amazing and plays the kind of music that I would love to be able to play. And he's so remarkably talented. And so it certainly hasn't hurt that I've been surrounded by some of that old country music that's kind of here in the center of the country, and since I've been living here for almost 20 years now. So I'm sure over the last 20 years, there's been a subconscious influence along with my kind of traditional influences like Steve Earle and Ray Wiley Hubbard and the Stones and what have you.
And this is where Jason steps out and lets the two of you geek out over Jay Farrar.
So your statement about, liking Wilco's early stuff, I think I use that exact phrase, Jason, when we were talking about it Friday at Fitzgerald's. And that's my answer all the time. Wilco's early stuff was amazing, but after Summer Teeth, they lost me, right? So that was like 20 years ago. Whereas Sunvolt's my favorite band in the whole world. And Jay Farrar can do no wrong in my book. So you win points.
Yeah, I think if you listen to those early records from Wilco, that's when they were a rock and roll band.
Yeah.
And this isn't a criticism. It's just they've evolved as the years have gone by, and they've become more of a pop band. And in the production, Jeff Tweedy's vocals have been put far more forward than they ever were before. They used to be a heavy guitar, like big booming guitars in their first couple albums. Yeah. And so it's just a completely different sound today versus what they were playing when Wilco first started. So, that music, I love the guitar riffs and just the bangers they used to play.
Yeah, we had an episode of this podcast called "Does Wilco Suck?" Because I was unconvinced that they didn't, and I was convinced in the conversation that they don't. But that was kind of the conclusion that I came to anyway for my tastes was, their early stuff was really good, but as Jeff Tweedy's vocals took more of a prominence, I don't think he's a great vocalist. And so when you've got, I think, a weak link in the band, soft criticism, not terrible, just a weak link when you're comparing them to other bands and you put that forward, they sound soft to me. Yeah, and that was my take on Wilco.
And I think what most songwriters will tell you is that Jeff Tweedy is one of like the great songwriters of a generation.
No argument there.
Lyricists of his generation, and he's still a great lyricist. And the guy's written books on songwriting. And but yeah, I'm definitely more between the J and Jeff. I'm definitely in the in
Team J.
In the Team J. So
yeah. All right. You can stay. All right. So, you are in St. Louis now. You're going to be going out on the road.
Yep.
You know, that's not really a young man's game.
No, it's hard.
Are you approaching this as a hobby, or are you going all out and you're going to play until you make it?
That's a great question. I'm going to play until I'm broke, which is we're getting really close. I'll tell you, you bring up a great point about being on the road. Like, we played South by Southwest last year, and we stayed in what we lovingly refer to as the Murder Hotel. And Jason, it was much worse than some of the hotels you and I used to stay in when we would go down there. Thanks. And it was, it's being on the road. You're right. It is a young man's game because it's people that don't mind like crashing on floors and things. But we're on the road a lot the next 6 months. We're playing later in June in Dallas, and then Fayetteville, and then later in the summer we're playing in Evansville, Indiana, and then outside of Nashville, and we're hoping to play in Louisville, and then we play and go back to Arkansas later this year. So we're on the road a lot this year, and it's funny. A lot of performers, a lot of songwriters, people in bands, they love playing in front of crowds, and I certainly do. But if I had to pick one aspect of playing music that I like, is that typically it has to do with our songwriting process, and that when I'll write a song and I'm just doing it on a guitar, and I bring it into the band, and I'll say, hey, let me just show you what I got, and I'll give everybody sheet music, but it's more what's called tablature, because most musicians play off tablature. They don't read formal sheet music. And they'll look it up, but more than anything, they'll take a quick look at it, but they're listening to the chords I'm playing. And then after maybe one time through, or even halfway through, they'll start playing. And then we'll sit there and go through a song 3 to 5 times. And there's something about that process of building a piece of music together that I like more than almost anything in the world. It's just a wonderful experience. It's kind of like, Jason, you can relate to this, a creative brainstorm where you have a great idea for an advertising concept, and you have a team of people that are bolting things on over and over and over again. It's a really similar process. You start with the germ of an idea and you build in that. I love playing in front of people, but I just absolutely adore just building a song with the band.
Very cool. So before we jump to break, I have to ask about the name.
Yeah.
Was there any hesitation in using that? I mean, it's obviously an innuendo thing, but I'm surprised that with that name, some clubs and whatnot actually will take you seriously, or is it meant to be a not too serious part of the pitch?
I think it hampers us to your point. It's definitely better than the original name, which was the Strip Club House Band. But I spend, and I can read them to you right now, I spend a ridiculous amount of time coming up with new band names in the event that Atomic ever kicks me out or just goes the way of the dinosaurs. So I can tell you those now if you'd like to hear them. But I think some people are concerned about the name, and I hope that when they hear our music, they recognize that we're a real thing, and we take the craft really seriously, and I think we have a place somewhere in this music landscape.
Well, let's jump out and listen to a little bit more of Atomic Junk Shot. The Devil Drives a Prius takes us to break. This is Roots Music Rambler.
Where the devil drives a Prius, swear my mama's grave. Drive like an old lady, saw him just the other day. Where the devil drives a Prius, drive just way too slow. Stopping all the traffic, going about 10 below. 64. Speed limit of 70. Got my pedal to the floor. Up ahead in the left lane. Going about 55. Bright red Prius. In 63, his brother's bar was dying in the wind. Mama asked Big Dwayne if he'd step in. Well, the mob, it had its hooks in everything. And it was no exception when the phone might ring. It could be Whitey, Tony Paul, or Chalky Red. Don't pay up.
That song was Bar in Toledo. It is from the warped mind of Aaron Perlut and the kick-ass sounds of Atomic Junk Shot. Aaron's here with us on the big program this week. Aaron, tell us a little bit about Bar in Toledo. I don't believe I was ever in a bar in Toledo with you, so it's not about me.
Yeah, we've been in bars elsewhere, but not there. Bar in Toledo actually came from a book by the same name called A Bar in Toledo, written by a woman whose husband you know. Her name is Stephanie Abijay. Her husband's Dave Stein. But she wrote this book it was really about her father. Her father was kind of a notorious club owner in the 60s and 70s and early 80s in Toledo, Ohio. And during that period of time in the 60s, it was an absolute haven for pop music. So Jerry Lee Lewis, Fats Domino, the Everly Brothers, they all played there. And then at some point, the bar was struggling, and the guys who wrote the song Lucille for Kenny Rogers came in there. And when they talk about a bar, they're actually talking about that bar. Because of that song, it became transformed into a country music bar, and anyone big name you know from the 70s played there, from Charlie Pride to Loretta Lynn to Mel Tillis, whoever. But the book is really about chasing the American dream and getting lost in this effort to chase that American dream and getting caught up with the mob and leaving your family behind. And it's Stephanie's life story about how she grew up.
Wow.
And so I read the book, and it's a really well-written book. You can find it anywhere. And I decided to kind of write a song about it. And it's very true to the book in 6 minutes or less.
That's cool. And I'm glad you pointed that out. We'll make sure there's links to the book in the show notes. And I'm also going to, because you gave the shout out to Dave Stein, I'm going to put a link to his woodworking site out there, because the guy's talented as shit and makes fantastic furniture out of basically, dead wood that he finds on his farm. So good stuff. Before we go further, I don't want to miss the opportunity to also do another shout out. I want to ask you about your music podcast. You've been doing Load Out Loud for a while. Tell us about it.
Yeah. I started the Loadout. We're in our 5th season. It's just kind of driven by my interests more than anything else. But I've been really, really fortunate to have quite a few Rock and Roll Hall of Famers on there, a bunch of Grammy winners. Lately, I've tried to kind of diversify it. Initially, it was very focused on Americana, but we've gotten into jazz and blues, and have had everyone from John Oates to Chris Hillman of the Byrds, Dave Mason from Traffic, and been really fortunate. And usually we have somewhere between 13 and 15 shows a year, and they tend to be more long form, but it's been a fun experience and a way to kind of scratch my nerd gene of just liking to talk to people about music.
Good stuff. So Aaron, you and I worked together for a few years, and I mentioned earlier, we've known each other for a long time. And
15 years, probably.
Yeah, it's about that. And I, as I mentioned earlier, I didn't even know you played guitar, much less wrote songs, until just a couple of years ago. But I also know, I think about the same time you started talking about the band, you also made a big life change. Was that a coincidence, or are the two related?
It was a coincidence, but one allowed me to kind of, I think, become much more proficient in the other. So I stopped drinking about 5.5 years ago. And I think it really brought clarity of mind that I had never had before. But I had a real problem with alcohol, as you saw on many occasions, and, gave it up. And I haven't had a drink in about 5.5 years. And it's honestly the best thing I ever did. I think a lot of people, when they quit drinking, and that's kind of if they're able to, that's the end of their, aside from making sure they don't drink, that's the end of the process for them. They just have to continue to do that one thing. For me, though, when I stripped away the alcohol, I got to see kind of the ugliness that was left behind. And that was the anxiety that had been driving the alcohol, and a sense of self-worth that was pretty much nil. And so I addressed that as well. And so those two things in parallel have had a huge impact on me personally, on my family, on every relationship that I have. And, for those that, I'm very grateful for those that I wronged during those many, many years that I was drinking and feeling horrible about myself, that have been kind enough to give me a second chance. And then I do think, though, that it allowed me to have clarity of mind to be a better songwriter, to learn the craft better, to work harder, and to really focus, as opposed to just always having a bottle in my hand.
Wow.
Nice.
That's powerful stuff. And I get the feeling that when you and Falls worked together, you weren't yet sober. So was eliminating him from your day to day, did that help?
Hey.
Jason only made my life better. And
Aww.
and I
Suck ass.
I love Jason a lot, and I truly mean that. Jason's been an important part of my life. But there is one night in particular where we were in Chicago, and I know that he and I have big chunks of that evening that we don't even remember what happened. But that was purely my fault. I drove that episode. So
well, I will not shirk responsibility for contributing to your delinquency, but I will take responsibility for my part as well. I could have said no to the drinks that I had that night. Here's the only thing I will volunteer about that night. We had a client meeting the next morning or the next afternoon, and Aaron tried to wake me up at like 10 o'clock or something like that, and the meeting wasn't until 1. And I remember him trying to wake me up, and all I did was I looked over my shoulder and said, "You go fuck yourself."
He was flat. Jason was flat on his face in a hotel room bed. And he did say, "He's like, you go fuck." He kind of like muffled in between the pillows and fuck yourself.
My goodness.
Yeah,
we have fly on the wall then, huh?
Yeah. And after you and I made sweet love, Jason, I couldn't believe you treated me that way. I mean, come on.
Oh my God. I got to steer this train back on the tracks. So again, I'm not going to shirk responsibility for any contribution I made to prolonging your drinking problem. I'll take some of it.
Purely my own doing.
well, but I also seriously want to say I'm really proud of you. I'm glad you're sober. I'm glad you recognize you had a problem. I'm glad you addressed the underlying anxieties and whatnot. Really good for you. I'm proud of you for doing that, because it takes a bigger man to do that than it does to just drink all the time. So good stuff. That leads me to another question, though. You're now throwing yourself into bars and roadhouses playing music. Does that challenge your sobriety at all, or do you have mechanisms in place to guard against that?
It does not challenge me in any way.
Good.
My life is so much better without it. And I encourage everyone around me, I don't care if it's at home or if it's on the road or what have you, to drink around me, because I don't want someone to in any way feel that they have to tap dance around my needs. People that bore witness to me drinking knew that if I had one drink, I was going to have 4, and then those 4 led to about 13 more. My wife can have a glass or 2 of wine and she's done. And she usually does. She'll have a glass of wine a night and she's done. And she's able to do that. And people that can control themselves, I just simply can't. And so I know that once I start down that road, it's a very dark place, and I don't need to in any way go down that road anymore. And so, no, I'm absolutely fine with it. I do, though, have great appreciation for people who have other challenges with it. I know that I think I'm probably a unique case. I do a group periodically with a bunch of musicians on Zoom, and some of them have had trouble going a day without doing coke or doing whatever, and anybody, not those people in particular, but people that are recovering addicts. And so I have great respect for the reality that other people deal with this in different ways and have different challenges. And so I try to be in tune to what they're be sensitive to those challenges by other people.
For sure. So you're working on staying sober, you're promoting the album. What's next for Atomic Junk Shot? Where can people find you live? Where can they find you online?
Yeah, so the easiest way to find us, where you can find everything about us, is atomicjunkshot.com. Links to our socials are there. You'll find links to where you can stream us. We can be streamed pretty much anywhere. And we're going to be on the road a lot this summer. Our whole touring schedule is on the website. The end of June, we're in Dallas and then Fayetteville. In August, we're going to be traveling in Indiana and hopefully, I believe, Louisville eventually, and Nashville. And so, easiest place just go to atomicjunkshot.com or any social media or what have you.
All those links will be in.
Yeah.
All those links will be in the show notes. Make sure you get out and see Atomic Junk Shot. Download the album, follow along. I know Aaron well enough to know much ridiculousness is in store for you, and that's normally a good thing with him. Aaron, thanks so much for coming on the show, man. I'm excited to see y'all blow it up and sell a bunch of records.
Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it. The band appreciates it. America appreciates it. My pants appreciate it. Thank you.
Let's go out with my favorite song from the new album. The album is called Peace Dale. The cut we're going to send Aaron off with is Honky Tonk Drinking Song. So here's to not needing it anymore for Aaron, and here's to singing it when you need it for everyone else. This is Roots Music Rambler.
Just trying to write a song. It's not too short and not too long. For the bars when we don't want to think, makes you want to get on your drink. We know the words and we sing them aloud. Take our arms and we put them around our drinking buddies to the left and the right as we raise up our glasses all through the night with just a honky-tonk.
All right, Aaron Perlut from Atomic Junk Shot. Check them out. And I promise you go see them live. It'll be a good show. Aaron's entertaining, as you probably could gather from the interview. I was a little disappointed in him. He was a little tame tonight talking to us. He's normally, kind of batshit crazy. But he toned it down for us. I don't know why, but you probably got a little sneak peek of his sense of humor and whatnot in there. And of course, band called Atomic Junk Shot. You're rolling the dice, but go check them out. They're gonna be good. All right, it's time for the Pickin the Grinnin segment. Other than our guest, of course, Francesca and I like to pick some music to recommend to you. They might be new artists. They might be old artists. It might be old stuff. It might be an album. It might be a song. Just something we found that we've been listening to recently that's made us grin, and so it's our pick to recommend new music to you. And so we're going to do that in this segment of the show. So I'll go first this time. I don't always go first. I throw Francesca under the bus sometimes and make her go first, but I'm going to go first this time. I have been poking around some of the Spotify playlists in the Americana and folk space, just trying to find artists that I'm not familiar with and listen to them more and whatnot. And one that I'd heard of, but I hadn't really, sort of gotten into yet and listened to their music. The last week that I've been listening is the Cactus Blossoms. And the Cactus Blossoms are, I believe, a couple of brothers. They have different last names, so I'm assuming they might be stepbrothers. But they're a couple of brothers from Minneapolis. And they have a kind of a folk, alt country, little bit of pop. They remind me of the Everly Brothers, but with kind of a modern sound. They've got a really good percussion. They've got like solid driving drums, and then they've got these like light kind of wispy guitars. And it's just really good kind of chilling out music. You know, you can throw this on and just kind of hang out in the house and, you know, do things, and it's going to set a good mood for you. Their songs are light and fun and entertaining, and I've been enjoying the Cactus Blossoms. So we'll make sure there's links to their Spotify page in the show notes so that you can go out and check them out as my Pickin the Grinnin this week. Francesca, what you got?
Well, first I'll say that I enjoy the Cactus Blossoms also. I have seen them live, and they are just as you described, you know, light, airy, chill out music. And in person, they are so dreamy when they're singing. Yeah, like just being in the crowd and just standing there and just watching and listening, like yeah, I was elsewhere. I was in La La Land. And but that's how good they are. And they are compared to the Everly Brothers a lot. You know, they've got that blood harmony. We talked about that too with the Secret Sisters. And yeah, they're really enjoyable, and I would go see them again for sure.
Sweet.
Yeah. So, okay, my Pickin the Grinnin, and Jason, you'll know this one because we saw them together on Friday night at Fitzgerald's. So, Jason was in Chicago. We went to see Tyler Childers at United Center. We talked about that already. That was Thursday night. Friday night, Jason, Karen, and I went to Fitzgerald's. And if you've listened to at least one other episode of this show, we talk about it pretty much all the time. So Fitzgerald's, iconic Chicago area music venue. And so Jason just wanted to see Fitzgerald's. Driving and Crying was playing in the main bar area, but we didn't, we just decided to sit in the sidebar, as it's called, and have something to eat and see whoever was playing there. And it turned out to be this band called Gin Palace Jesters. And before we even knew the name or knew what they were about, we saw a couple of band members like in the bar area setting up. And Jason and I were like, they look like they're gonna be good, right? Like they had that old timey honky tonk rockabilly look going, you know, jeans folded up, suspenders. And that's exactly what they sounded like. And entertaining, you know, told some jokes. There's a dude on the accordion. There's an upright bass, and I don't know if I've ever talked about how much I love the upright bass, but that was a treat. And the pedal steel, outstanding. So I would totally go see them again. I'm a little upset though that I have not found them at all on social media. So they are on Spotify, but as far as I can tell, there's no Instagram, no Facebook.
Right.
So, you know, I don't know how we're going to keep up with them, but I would definitely go see them again if they play in the area.
I would too. And I think the two guys who appeared to be the leaders of the band, so the lead singer, main guitarist, and then the rhythm guitarist, were both older generation guys. So they may not be big into the social medias.
Right.
The other guys in the band seemed to be a little bit younger. I mean, the fiddle player was a little older, but he was actually, I thought the fiddle player was actually more of like a violin player. He was less fiddle, more violin to me, but it worked and it sounded really good. And Karen loved him too. She's a sucker for a pedal steel. So if you got a pedal steel in your band, she's going to like you. And I really enjoyed them too. I thought they were great. They had some really fun songs, and the sidebar there at Fitzgerald's is just big enough, even with a lot of people in there, that some couples can get up and dance a little bit, two-step, and that was fun. It was a lot of fun, and they played good tunes, and I enjoyed them. They were great.
Good.
So, well, good.
All right.
Yeah, we had a blast at Fitzgerald's. We also saw, I don't know what was the name of the other band that was outside that was crazy?
Ham Council.
Yes, Ham Council. We'll put a link to them in the show notes. They were a great band. They were doing a lot of cool covers and whatnot. And they had a couple of people, the lead singers, there's a couple of them. They were, it's hard to explain what they looked like. There was a lot of red, white, and blue glitter, and there was some neon scarves and big sunglasses. And it was this very strange looking couple of people. And when one of them wasn't singing, they were in front of the stage doing like interpretive dance to the music, and very entertaining, but kind of in a please don't touch me kind of way. So But yeah, they were fun.
Oh.
So
It
we
was
had a
good
blast.
Night. A good night had it all.
It was a good night. Tyler Childers and SG Goodwin were awesome. It was a fun trip to Chicago. Had me some Italian beef. I didn't take the jalapenos off of it, so it hurt me for a couple days, but all good and all good fun. I'm sure we'll do it again. Roots Music Rambler is a production of Falls and Partners, copyright 2024. Our theme music is Sheepskin and Beeswax by Gentacorum. Join us online at rootsmusicrambler.com and make sure you mash that subscribe or follow button so you remember to join us for the next Hoe-Down and Throwdown. She's Frank.
He's Falls.
And whatever you do, kids, ramble on.